Hey everybody, what's going on? Eric here, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Blue Chibson Guitar Mods. And in this episode, we're going to try to install a nut. And I mean try. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back again. Glad you guys have been following the series of the Chibson mod upgrades and whatever that I've been doing with this blue Chibson electric guitar. And right now I wanted to install a new nut, which is basically a bone nut. Excuse me. Get rid of the plastic nut that came on this thing because it was a piece of shit. Anyways, a little bit of a hassle, a little bit of a problem with this, trying to install the new nut. Now, if you know anything about guitars, there's a lot of things that have to be squared up with each other and everything else. A nut is the same thing. So if you have any type of a square tool, this comes off of a ruler for doing different measuring and stuff like that, but it's perfectly machined square. So if you put your nut up against it and stuff, you shouldn't rock back and forth. It should be pretty much square all the way down. Well, that's the way your seat for your nut should be. Popping off the old plastic nut, yeah, this one was not square. So let's get up close and personal to my nut. Hope everyone's doing well. Well, today I want to try to fit the bone nut in the stock slot of where the plastic nut was sitting. Now, you could leave the plastic nut on there if you want. It's not that much of a big deal, I guess. I mean, I rather replace the plastic nuts to something a lot better than what those are. So what I have here is a bone nut that is size 4 Les Paul, including the string spacing is already pre-cut. And all I have to do is probably just do the action height one by one on each string with this. After putting the nut into place, I can kind of tell that the action height's going to be a little bit high, but not that high enough to where I'm going to have to cut the bottom of the nut. Now, how do you clean this seat? Okay, well, you can use some files. You can use a razor blade and scrape off some of the glue. Found a little bit of a way that is a lot easier and can keep that square. Now, if you have a tool like this, which is part of a ruler, you can get them almost any place. If you take the nut, set it inside here. Now this surface and this surface are machined flat, and you can see that this nut is perfectly square. There's no gaps, there's no light, there's no nothing coming through on either side. So you want to try to keep this as square as possible. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, I found a piece of wooden square dowel rod, and as you can see, I chipped off the corners over here so it looks like that. This side I'm not going to use, but this side I will. So what I've done with this is I took a piece of 800 grit sandpaper, basically set it down on the table, nice flat surface, and kind of gave it a little bit of roundabout just to get rid of the burrs and loose fibers of wood and to make this edge nice and sharp. Afterwards, I take this tool here and put this in there and check to see if I am square, if I end up putting too much pressure on one side and the other, or not sitting perfectly flat. That tool is telling me that this edge here is perfectly square. So how do I use this to make that square? Well, again, with the 800 grit sandpaper, wrapping it around, getting that nice corner over there. So you want to put some pressure in this edge. Make sure that is a nice sharp, or you could fold the sandpaper in half and seat that piece of wood right in the edge of that crease. So now I want to use this to sand this. You could do this to remove glue. You could do this to get everything squared up. I would not use anything more than 800 grit sandpaper or 600 grit sandpaper. 400 grit sandpaper, the paper is a little bit on the thick side and it's a little bit more of an aggressive cut. You might end up removing more material than you want to. So I recommend doing this. It's better to do it a little bit slower. It is a lot easier than using a file. And it works. So I'm going to set this right into that slot. All right, and I'm not like putting pressure here. I'm not putting pressure here. I'm not putting down force on it. I'm not pushing on it. I'm just kind of giving it just a little bit of, just holding it snug in that corner. And you want to make sure that you're not rocking back and forth either. So you want to make sure that your sitting's flat and just kind of give it.
A few moments later.
Start giving it a little bit of a cut. Cleaning up the dust up here. Checking the fit of the nut. And I tell you what, that's seating in there pretty damn nice. But I still want to go over a little bit more. So let me get another piece of paper. This time I'm going to crease it so it gives me a nice sharp edge. Put it in there. Get that crease right where that edge is. Pinch this over. Make sure it's nice and tight all the way around. Now you can get a piece of block, sand with sticky sandpaper for 800 grit, and you can do the same thing with this if you're worried about holding this. Set that in there and make sure that it's resting on the bottom so you're not tilting forward, you're not tilting too much down. It's a little bit hard with this shorter piece of paper, but it can still be done.
A few moments later.
And you can kind of see, how you're hitting on a flat surface. This white here is a little bit of the clear coat that I'm removing. The nut's going to hide that. And you can see how much you're cutting off of here. Go ahead and set the nut back into place again. You see there's still a little bit of a wobble. Now some of that might be crap built up in the edge, the crack right there. So, and I end up removing some of it's on the nut. So let me scrape that, blow that off again. See, that little bit got rid of that wobble. Pretty simple, pretty easy. Anybody can do it. You guys can do it too. Not that big of a deal. So, on to the next step of gluing the nut and put some strings on here. Right? Be right back. Alright, so what I'm going to be using for this is a little bit of Loctite super glue. Now this is a extra time control, so you can kind of move this into position before this shit sets up. Now you don't need a lot of it, just a couple drops. So I'm going to put a drop on this side. It's coming. Drop on this side. And I don't want to put anything on the back wall over here because it might chip out next time if I ever want to replace this nut. I'll put one little drop in the middle. There you go. I just dropped the cap. So like I said, this has some extra time to get it to basically set up. So you can kind of maneuver it into position. So you look where your string spacing is and everything else. Hold it down for a few.
A few moments later.
And she's set. So let me pick up that cap before this tip glues itself shut. Don't want that to happen. Not bad stuff. I've been using it for basically putting in nuts, and I haven't had any troubles with it. So that's it. I'm going to have to do a little bit of sanding on the side over here or filing on the sides of the nut, but the nut's installed. So that's it. On to putting some strings on this thing, right? About fucking time. All right. So probably be back again, maybe with a new video. Done for today. Take care all.